General Thakmore reviewed the tactical displays with growing satisfaction. The human fleet was in full retreat across the Kepler sector, their energy shields flickering under the relentless barrage of Vortak plasma cannons. After 18 months of bitter conflict, victory was finally within reach. Their defensive grid is collapsing, reported Commander Zex, his scaled hands dancing across the holographic controls. Estimated time to complete route, 3 standard hours. Thakmore's jaw mandibles clicked approvingly. The humans had proven surprisingly resilient for such a young species, but their technology was centuries behind Vortak engineering. Their kinetic weapons were laughably primitive compared to plasma fire, and their armor was barely adequate against directed energy beams. The tide had turned when Vortak forces developed quantum interference fields that rendered human electronics useless within a 50-kilometer radius. Their ships became flying coffins, their weapons little more than expensive decorations. It was only a matter of time before. "Sir," the communications officer's voice cracked with panic. "Multiple human vessels changing course. They're heading directly for us." "Impossible." Thakmore studied the displays. "Their engines are dead." "How are they?" "They're using emergency thrusters, sir. Minimal power, but they're accelerating toward our position." The officer's scales had turned pale yellow with fear. "Collision course with the flagship. Suicide runs?" Thakmore dismissed the concern with a wave. "Their hulls will crumple against our shields like..." The first human ship struck the Vortak dreadnought with impossible precision. But instead of exploding, its hull split open like a flower, and something unthinkable happened. Figures in primitive armor began pouring out, magnetic boots clanging against the enemy hull. "Boarding parties?" Zex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "But sir, our hull is reinforced durasteel. They can't possibly breach." The cutting torches appeared first, primitive flames that somehow burned through quantum-hardened armor plating. Then came the explosives, crude chemical charges that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. And finally, when the Vortak crew activated emergency countermeasures and flooded the breach sections with toxic atmosphere, the humans did something that defied all military logic. They discarded their helmets. Atmospheric readings show lethal toxin levels. The sensor operator reported, his voice hollow with shock. The humans should be dead in seconds. Instead, they kept moving. Some stumbled, others vomited blood through improvised masks, but they advanced through corridors filled with poison gas, wielding weapons that belonged in a museum. The first Vortak security team met them in Section 7. Elite warriors in powered armor, armed with plasma rifles that could melt through a meter of solid steel. The engagement should have lasted seconds. "The Zephyrians could phase through walls," Kane continued conversationally, "but they can't phase through vacuum. The hegemony can predict quantum fluctuations, but they didn't predict their own embassy exploding. The Taurids have armor that can stop plasma cannons, but it doesn't stop a knife between the plates." Emperor Zyxthara's compound eyes glittered with something resembling amusement. "Do you understand now? Every species in the galaxy has evolved beyond their predatory instincts. They've become specialized, efficient, predictable. Humans." He gestured one chitinous appendage toward Kane. "Humans never stopped being apex predators. They just learned to hunt in space." Ambassador Vex attempted one final protest. "But surely the risk of employing such a volatile species is why no one has successfully killed me since I hired him," the Emperor finished. "You see threats in terms of technology and power. He sees them in terms of death. Your assassins plan for shields and scanners. They don't plan for someone who thinks like a weapon." Kane hadn't moved throughout the exchange, but somehow every delegate felt his attention like a weight. They were prey animals in the presence of something that had never forgotten how to hunt. As the council session concluded and the delegates filed out with unseemly haste, Emperor Zyxthara turned to his guardian. "It lasted 3 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 12 Vortak soldiers lay dismembered in the corridor. The humans had closed the distance with impossible speed, ignoring plasma burns that should have been fatal, swinging crude metal blades with mechanical precision. Their leader, A scarred woman with blood streaming from radiation burns pulled her sword from a warrior's chest and continued deeper into the ship. How? Thakmor whispered, watching the tactical display update in real time. How are they still moving? The answer came from intercepted human communications, broadcast on open channels for all to hear. Pain is temporary. Death is forever. For Earth. More ships arrived. More boarding pods. More humans with their impossible weapons and their inexplicable refusal to die when they show. Anything concerning today? Kane shrugged. Vex's emotional resonance changed when you mentioned Proxima Station. Either guilt or recognition. And Kex's thermal signature spiked during his speech about human tactics. Recommendations. Watch them both. But then you already knew that. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. In a galaxy of evolved civilizations, sometimes the most primitive solution was the most elegant one. After all, it was hard to outthink something that never stopped thinking about killing you. Kane resumed his vigil, gray eyes already calculating new angles of attack, new methods of protection. In his mind, the universe remained beautifully simple. There were threats to eliminate and an emperor to keep alive. Everything else was just noise.